Welcome to the Hey Docs podcast with your host, Jill Allen. Today I am joined by Alan Twigg, co-owner of Erickson and Associates, one of the most trusted names in HR solutions for dental and orthodontic practices. Alan works with teams across the country to navigate hiring, compliance, leadership, and everything in between. In this episode, we're talking about what practice owners can do to build stronger teams, avoid HR pitfalls, and create a culture that lasts. So let's get started.
This episode was brought to you by Gray Finch. Hey docs, if you want to have a great business, the right practice management software is essential. But some can be slow, outdated, and lacking good support. That's why I recommend Gray Finch to all orthodontists. It's the fastest, most reliable, and most secure platform to grow your business and improve your efficiency. It's completely web-based, so you can run your entire practice anywhere and from any device with no servers, no downloads, or hidden fees. They even have the most helpful and responsive support team around. Right now, Gray Finch is giving a $500 discount to our listeners. Visit grayfinch.com/Jill Allen to learn more and see why it's one of the fastest growing providers in America.
Alan, I am so excited to have you back on Hey Docs. Thanks for being here today.
Yeah, thank you, Jill. It's a pleasure. Happy to be back.
Yes. So I have been looking forward to doing another podcast with you since the very first time that we did our podcast. I feel like we have such good conversations and you and your company bring so much to our industry. So I'm really looking forward to today. In the event that maybe one of our listeners hasn't listened to a previous podcast with us, would you mind just starting us off, telling us a little bit about your company, Erickson and Associates, and just your background and what brought you into the HR side of orthodontics and dentistry.
Sure, absolutely. Yeah. So Ben Erickson and Associates has been around for over 45 years. It was originally founded by a guy named Bent Erickson. He was from Denmark. That's why the spelling is a little bit unique. And it was him and his wife. And then my father, Tim Twigg, he bought the company back in 2002 and grew it, ran it, expanded it. And then I took it over a couple years ago. And so I do consider it to be a family business. And even our second employee that we ever hired, Shelly, still works here, which is wonderful. And let's see, next year, 2026, will be 20 years working in HR for me. And I come from a family of educators and consultants, and so I feel like this world is in my blood. I was originally out of college part of a startup business, and I did all of the HR and the employee management and creating the kind of the culture and the just the whole everything with that business, and I love that part. So that's how I originally got into it. And myself and Ben Erickson are really in alignment about really wanting to be the best educational and support company out there for orthodontists in the HR world. Because as we know, HR is hard. It's about people, and people are different and unique and different backgrounds. And everybody's got their beliefs and their challenges and their communication style. And there's conflict and there's all these different parts and pieces. And of course, most orthodontists and managers and spouses, most people don't have real formal training in any of this stuff. And so it's hard because it gets emotional, it gets challenging. And I just really enjoy helping people navigate this world and make it reduce the temperature, make it more manageable, calmer, easier, simpler, because we just spend so much of our lives at work, and it's just heartbreaking how many people are driving into work each morning and it's just, I don't want to work with those people, or I don't want to see those people, or I hate my job, or I hate and it's so sad, and it doesn't have to be that way. So there you go. That's a little bit about me and Ben Erickson.
Yeah, no, I love it. And I'm so glad that you guys are in this space and have dedicated 20 years to this. And I have to say, like, every time I have clients that I know are working with you, I have this, okay, I don't have to worry that they're going to have to stress about all these things that have to do with AR because I think you and I would both agree. Most people don't get into business because they're like, "Ooh, I can't wait for my first HR issue that I got to deal with." Most of us are like, "Okay, I escaped that one. Okay, I escaped that one." We're going through hoping that we are not going to have an HR issue that comes up, but we know it's gonna happen at some point. And
Yep.
so I would love for us to just start talking about just in general how hard it is to hire great team members. And I know with you being on the back end side of it, it's the first step is finding that right team member. But I think the second step is setting up a good environment in which the team member knows where their boundaries are at, knows what to expect out of the company, and I'm wondering if you can talk about that so that maybe our docs have some understanding of what it means to really keep a good employee and be safe with keeping a good employee as well.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, so we continue to be in, without a doubt, the tightest labor market that we've ever seen in the dental world. And it's just, for lack of anything, it's just lack of supply. There's just not
Mm.
enough people out there. And I'm encouraged by folks who have hired from outside of the dental and ortho world and had great success with folks. And just that classic idea of the things that you can't train. And if you hire someone for fit, you can train them on some of the other mechanics. And so I think that's a big part of it. I really encourage every practice to think deeply about what it is that makes them unique from an employment perspective. Every
Mhm.
office has already done that whole thinking around why should a patient choose our office versus the orthodontist down the street? And it's that same idea for employees. If we had the absolute best ortho assistant or front office team member that's great attitude, great experience, work ethic, and all of that, why should they choose to work for your office versus the office down the street? And of course, that's way more than just the wages and the benefits. That's about culture. It's about how the employees are treated. It's about ultimately what it feels like to work in your practice. What is it
Mhm.
like as an employee? And putting that into words, because that employment experience, that culture, that is what will make or break how long someone stays with you. And offices that don't have a very great culture, where it's just sink or swim and you're here to work hard and get a paycheck and that's it, they tend to have people who leave after a year or two. And if you have an office where there is that really great culture and people want to stick around, that's where not only do people stick around, but those are the offices that actually don't have a whole lot of trouble finding new
Mm.
people when they need to grow or someone retires. They have people who say, I want to work for you because I've already heard for years, I've heard about what a great place it is to work there and all of that. So that's just so important, is emphasizing what it is that makes your office unique, again, from that employment perspective.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that is such an important point, and we really do have to think about that. It is that positioning point that what does make us different than the doc down the street, and how are we going to convey that? And it's hard, right? You're starting with an ad online usually, and then it translates into maybe a Zoom interview and then maybe an in-person interview. And just how do you go from that into, okay, now I'm ready to offer, this person seems like they're a good fit, I seem like I'm a good fit for them. And that's the next point that I want to talk about, because I feel like there's just so much back and forth about how do we move from dating into a marriage. And I think when we think about all of the steps that as employers we have to go through to get that employee onboarded and in and into our office and acclimated into our culture, I want to talk a little bit about reference checks. And I know that we don't do a lot of talking about this because I think a lot of times in our industry, there's a lot of just that my gut says they're a good person, or I heard online that we should do it, or I heard online that absolutely you should not do it. Or if you do a reference check, you can only ask this question or that question, or you're really not going to get any answers because you really can't ask any questions. I'm wondering if you can shed some light on that and maybe talk to us about what we're seeing right now, 2025, 2026, because I think there's a very different perspective on this now than maybe when I got into the industry 33 years ago and what was done if you were going to hire somebody. I know it's a deep dive, but do you mind taking that on for us?
Oh, sure. Yeah, this is a big topic and it's one that is very common and everyone wants to think about it, talk about it, figure it out. First of all, when we say reference checks, just to be real clear, the traditional standard in HR, when we say a reference check, we mean former employers. If someone submits a resume and there are personal references, their buddy, their family member, friends, that is not a reference that as an employer we really should be interested in calling because we know what we're going to get. Of course, they're going to say, oh, this person's amazing and they were wonderful and you should hire them and all.
Why else would they be on the resume?
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah. And it's one of those things where terminology wise, we really should be calling it something else other than reference checking, but that's just the standard. So former employers, yeah, and it's 2025, 2026, we got to be doing this, especially in the dental world because of embezzlement, because of just mediocre and in some cases toxic employees, people with bad attitudes, people who have been on a power trip or they've been on something where they just got fired and all of that. It's one of those reasons why we can't rely strictly just on the resume. And you mentioned gut feeling. If people want to do a deep dive into the science behind how wrong we often are in our perceptions, how our unconscious biases come into play, all of those kind of things play into it. So we want to have just as much data as we can get in this whole process. Also recognizing that when we think about things like embezzlement or theft of controlled substances or things like that, most dentists do not call the police. And that's a whole separate conversation about what
Yes.
offices should be doing and all of that. But the reality is, of course, that most dentists do not call the police. They just fire someone or have them go away, and then we never know what happens. When it comes to reference checking, if you are the employer, number one, I recommend looking up the practice where someone worked and calling the phone number that's listed on their website. Because again, one of those little tricks, they could put their buddy's phone number on the resume as the reference, and it's not actually that practice's phone number. So you can think about that. And if you're the employer and you're calling to get a reference, you can ask whatever you want. Because this whole thing about, oh, you shouldn't say this, or you should only say that, or only give dates of employment, or that's all from the perspective of the person who is receiving the reference request call. But if you're the employer and you're doing this, you can ask anything you want. Now, the person may or may not give you any information. That's a whole separate thing, but just know you can ask whatever you want. Now, if you have somebody who's really cagey with information, stonewalling, I don't want to tell you anything about this person. One of the little tricks that you can do, this is mostly okay. This is maybe a little bit psychologically, whatever, but it's fun. So it would be where you would say to this person, okay, Dr. Jill, I'm interviewing Sarah, and Sarah said that when she worked for you, that she was a rock star person. She got your collections and billing up 35%, and she was bringing in way more money than anybody else ever had, and that she resigned in good standing. So what do you think about that, Dr. Jill? And that's where, if that's not true, usually someone just can't contain themselves, even though they're trying to be all like politically correct. They'll be like, what? Sarah said that's not true. She was terrible. That's not true at all. And that's where, so that's just a little trick.
Yeah. Yeah.
The
I
other
love
thing,
that.
of course, that does come into play with reference checking is background checking, which is a separate deal, but that's checking criminal history, potentially verifying licenses and social security numbers and things like that. And again, it's 2025. You got to be doing that. There are a lot of wonderful companies out there that do it. It's in the modern day and age, it's all paperless, it's fast. One of the companies I have a lot of experience with is called Data Quest. They're based out of Washington State. They work nationwide. Wonderful company, very easy system. It doesn't take 2 weeks to get the results. It takes a day, maybe 2 days. So the big thing though about background checks is you've got to work with a reputable company. If you just go to Google and
Mhm.
type in background check companies, you will get millions of hits, and a bunch of them are just going to be my cousin Vinny's background check company for $10. And it's like, those entities, they don't have access to all the data. They may not even have the legal authority to pull information. Make sure you work with a good, solid, reputable company when it comes to that
Yeah.
stuff.
Yeah, that's great. So I've got some follow-up questions for you about this because I'm not ready for you to stop unpacking this suitcase. When first, let's just talk about background checks. I'm so glad you brought that up because I did want to ask about that. I get asked this all the time from docs. Should we do a background check before we offer the position? Or can we offer the position and then say it is contingent upon a background check? Can you talk to that a little bit on what you think is best practice and which order? And when you should, I don't know, show your hand that is something that you're going to do as part of condition of hire.
Sure. To that last point, I think it's totally fine to put something like that in even your job posting so that even right off the bat, people, if they read it fully, then they'll see that. Typically, background checks and reference checks are done at the very end of the process. So after you've done all of your interviews and you feel like, okay, this person, or maybe you're down to your top two candidates, those are your main ones. Obviously, because we're in a tight labor market, oftentimes people are worried that if we don't do a job offer, if we don't
Hmm.
move quickly enough, this person will take a job somewhere else.
Yeah.
While I do think that's true and it is a valid concern, I do think it's important for folks to remember that if you are, in a sense, recruiting based on values and based on fit, someone who is really interested in working for you specifically because of who you are and what you are and what you do and all of that, they'll be fine waiting an extra
Hmm.
couple of days for reference checks and background checks to come in because they know they have nothing to hide. They know the references are going to say nice things, so it's all good. But you can do what you mentioned, which is called a conditional offer of employment letter. And that basically says, we like you, we want to hire you. In a sense, the job is yours. It's just contingent on passing a background check, or it's contingent on verification of some reference information. Totally fine, totally normal. And that basically tells someone who doesn't have anything to hide and where they know their background is clear, they know that their references are positive. It tells them, okay, great, I have a job. I don't need to worry about not getting this one or having to take another job or whatever it might be. So, yeah, all of that is totally good, totally normal. And background checks today are cheap. $40, $50 for a package of different things. It's very reasonable. The one thing I meant to say earlier and I forgot is with good background check companies like DataQuest and others, you need to go through a setup process. So they need to verify that you are a legitimate employer, you have the right to collect this kind of information. They need to do their own due diligence. Basically, they're not just turning over this protected information to who knows who you are thing. And that setup process can take a day, 2 days, 3 days, depending on circumstances and all of that. So it's important to do that now if you're not hiring, or even if you are in the midst of hiring, do it right now as soon as possible so that once you're set up, then it's just you're off and running quick, fast, 24 hours, 48 hours, you're done.
Ah, that's such a great tip. Thank you for going a little deeper in that suitcase for us and talking about that because these are the things that I think are so important and we hear so much out there and everybody's got their own opinions on it and whatnot. And I cannot agree with you more. I think that it is very important that especially now, it is so easy, I think, for people to this is an older phrase, but catfish their resumes to embellish on duties and that they did, and a lot of times really easily hide why they are no longer at maybe a previous location. And unfortunately, like you, I've seen many times where it's been because of embezzlement or this, that, or the other. And they get hired just down the street in another office, and it's just a really unfortunate situation. So I think there's a lot of CYA. I hate to say that, but we really do have to really cover ourselves because this is your business as business owners. And I think it's worth it to do a little, like, what is a $40 investment
Yeah.
and a maybe a 10-minute phone call to the potential of risk that opens you up to, especially when you get on the flip side of it, of having to let somebody go, and what that looks like on all of the levels that open us up there.
Yep, absolutely. Yeah, it's a small investment of time and a little bit of money, and it really does make a big difference. And yeah, the stats on resumes that are embellished, falsified, dates of employment that are fudged a little bit here and there to kind of close maybe a gap in
Mhm.
employment, all of those kinds of
Mhm.
things. Yeah, that's important for sure.
Yeah.
And now, a word from the sponsors who make this podcast possible. Are you thinking about opening an orthodontic practice? I know, it's a big decision, but saving 25% on the ADEC equipment you need to get started, that's an easy one. Because ADEC has a special program called Smart Start, designed to help you launch your first practice. You get up to 25% off your ADEC orthodontic equipment and furniture. You also get complimentary services to help you run and grow your business. And my favorite part, access to the Smart Start pricing for 2 whole years after you open your doors. That gives you flexibility to add more chairs as your cash flow grows. It's pretty smart. As an orthodontist, you care about getting all the little details right, and ADEC really got it right with this program. So if starting off with a big savings on ADEC equipment sounds good to you, the ADEC Smart Start is definitely worth a closer look. Just follow the link in the show notes to learn more. Hey docs, let's talk about Smile Suite, because it's not just another scheduling system. It's a game changer in the world of new patient management. And as a proud Smile Suite partner, I've witnessed the incredible impact it has on practices of all sizes. Smile Suite means your new patient calls and web leads are expertly handled 7 days a week, even during nights and weekends. And they offer top-notch customizable presentation software and seamless post-consultation follow-up. It's like having a secret weapon for your practice's success. Curious? Dive into the revolution at GetSmileSuite.com. And don't forget to mention Hey Docs to unlock some extra goodies. Elevate your practice with Smile Suite, because every smile deserves a suite of excellence.
So it takes me into my next question. And I think that so many times, as all of us as business owners, but I think in our orthodontic industry, I see it a lot. I work with a lot of doctors, and I think we are many times very conflict of adverse. Like, I just don't want to have to deal with that. Maybe things will get better. I'll just give them more money, and I'm sure that'll make them want to perform better for me. I'm wondering if you can talk to us from an HR side about how what are best practices for doctors, leaders to address poor performance, and what from a HR standpoint, is it better to not address and condone, or stick our head in the sand and pretend like it's not happening, or to address it and know that maybe we're going to ruffle some feathers, maybe we're going to cause some drama in our office, but maybe in the long run, that's better. Do you mind talking through that for us a little bit?
Sure. Yeah, it's such an important topic. Legitimately, there are bad employees out there. They do exist, absolutely. The vast majority of employees, though, are good employees, right? They want to show up and do a good job and serve the patients and provide for their families and everything. Majority of workers are very good, and ultimately, there's many analogies, but yeah, I think that most people, if given the right environment, they will really grow and thrive and succeed.
Mhm.
And having said that, yes, there are people who are just inherently lazy or bad attitude or whatever it is, and it's not repairable.
Mhm.
As a leader, if you have a team where most people are good and maybe you have one or two employees who are mediocre, they're not trainable, they are downright toxic, you have to address that because, as I think many people know, if you don't, you risk losing your good employees.
Mhm.
That's the worst case scenario, is not that we all have to deal with this annoying person. It's that all of our good people will eventually leave us and we'll be stuck with an office of mediocre, lazy, or bad people. So, the first step I recommend if you're in a position like that is a little bit of introspection. And that's just, if this is in general, if you have somebody that's not performing very well, think about, did you potentially rush the hiring process? Did you maybe hire someone in hoping that they would rise to the occasion, or hoping that they had the experience, but they don't? Or you hope that they could fill this role that you put them in, but they're not really the right seat on the bus, kind of a deal? So, a little bit of that. Did you maybe rush the onboarding? So, they do have the capability, but maybe because you were short staffed, you rushed the onboarding, you didn't really train them properly, and now they're making little mistakes just because of poor onboarding. Have you absolutely perfectly crystal clear communicated your expectations of what they are supposed to do? What does success
Mhm.
look like? And whether that's in a HR policy manual, job description, SOPs, just really good, solid onboarding and communication of that. Another thing, introspection wise, is, have you been consistent? Maybe as the leader, you've been inconsistent. Some people you're treating this way, some people you're treating that way. And also, just, are you creating that culture that facilitates engagement, that facilitates positive, everyone's happy, everyone's able to succeed and thrive? So there's that first step of that introspection. If any of that's applicable, then you want to address that first.
Mhm.
If you, though, have someone who is not meeting performance standards, there's a little productive model that we recommend. And this is a little way of adding some structure to that conversation.
Mhm.
And there's 5 steps to it. So the first step is just outlining what is your performance standard, or what is the expectation this person is supposed to have. And the context for that really should be your practice vision and who you want to be as a practice. So let's say it's an employee that's having chronic attendance issues. So our standard is, we expect people to be on time, ready to work, and our vision is we want to be the best orthodontic office that we possibly can be. The second step in this model is, what is the actual thing that's happening? And this needs to be objective fact. So in this case, it would be, you have been late 6 times in the past month. Okay, that's the objective thing that's actually happening. Step 3 is, what's the gap between that? And of course, we expect great attendance, and you've been late 6 times in the past month.
Mhm.
Step 4 is the most important step. And that is outlining the impact that this person's behavior, actions, and so on are having on the rest of the team, on the practice, on the patients, on the hitting bonuses, hitting
Mhm.
metrics that we want to hit. That impact is so important. Oftentimes people just say, "Hey, you've been showing up late. You're not supposed to show up late." And then they move on. But it's like, really tying it into the impact makes a big difference. And it makes it about not just you and me, and I'm the boss and you're the employee, and it's my way or the highway kind of a deal. It's about, no, this is about something bigger than just us. Because if you're not showing up on time, the patients aren't getting served, the employees are stressed out, we can't achieve our vision. And then step 5 is basically asking the employee for a commitment to change, to adjust, to now be in line with what we expect. And that's a model that sometimes, and it's
Love
not
that.
necessarily that
Yeah.
when you're talking to someone, you're like, okay, step one, step two. It's just
Yeah.
that in your communication with folks, you're outlining that. Obviously, address any sort of performance issues as quickly and as early as you can. I can't tell you how many times people call us and they say, yeah, my employee is making a bunch of mistakes. And we say, how long has this been going on? They say, it's been going on for maybe 2 years. And it's like, well, that, that should have been addressed 2 years ago
Right.
then, not
Right.
now.
Right.
But
Yep.
I get it. It's hard, it's challenging, but I really think that if you address it early on, you tie it in with vision and overall picture, I think that you will see positive results with that. Because
Mhm.
again, most people want to do a good job. And so until someone has proven that they are simply just uncoachable, untrainable, inherently, fundamentally lazy, bad, whatever it is, until they've proven that, then there's still hope that we can turn this around. And if we can turn it around, that's great, because then we don't have to go out into this crazy labor market and try to find
Right.
somebody.
Yeah. Oh, I really love those 5 points, and I think, again, I think even just thinking about it from the doctor perspective, if you can just get your head around what you're doing, we're not just reprimanding, we're not just jump in and pounce on them and jump back out and hope they do good. If we can have a plan, and I always say with my docs, we're either, unfortunately, we're all gonna have to deal with this at some point. We're either dealing with this from a point of we're trying to help our employee get better, and we really, I think, for the most part, we want everybody to do better. We don't want to have to take this to the next level, but if we do, then we've at least thought about how we got there versus just being very reactive in the moment, and then wondering why we're having to deal with the unemployment board or things like that, and not and it and those are uncomfortable situations, but I think, again, if we go in eyes wide open, we've got those steps. And I think, again, I just want to shout out to your company. I think one of the things that I have really appreciated is you guys just aren't just helping my doctors set up an employee manual, but you've also got all of these back end coaching components and auxiliary tools that really lay it out. So if you're here, this is what the form that you use. If you're here, this
Right.
is, and I think especially for younger doctors, I think that's just super important, but also for bigger offices when we've got office managers that, are
Mhm.
maybe stepping in, and this is a newer position for them, and they're still learning how to do this. I think just having those tools in place is huge, because HR is just not about an office manual, and it's not just about I heard this on a Facebook group, and so I think therefore this is how we handle a situation.
Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah. And it is one of those things where there's not formal training in it, and there are so many nuances to it. You take
Mhm.
pregnancy, for example. It might be a simple, straightforward, they're pregnant, they're working, they go out on leave, they come back, everything's fine. There could be severe morning sickness. There could be complications with the birth and they need extra time off. There could be all sorts of different what ifs that come into
Yep.
play. And often in HR, people go down the path of this is what you have to do, or what is the law on this. And sometimes that's applicable, but other times it's just what should you do? Or what are the pros and cons of this approach versus that approach? And that's where, again, it's experience, right? If you only did one set of clear aligners per year and that was it, you probably wouldn't be very good at it. But it's just, and it's if you just watch a YouTube video, it's not going to tell you everything you need to know about that. So it is one of those things where experience matters quite a bit.
Yeah, absolutely. Let's talk about the next thing that's on my mind. And again, I always joke like HR, doing our QuickBooks, handling all the stuff is not necessarily the sexy side of our business, right? But these are the things that we have to do as business owners. These are the things that we have to get in the weeds about. And I want you to talk a little bit, especially nowadays, I feel like, about what it means to stay compliant and really having an understanding of what that may mean in your state, what that may mean just within your office, because this is definitely an area where I can say, again, I'll pull back on long time in the industry. We weren't even worrying about FMLA and things like this. And now every state's a little bit different, and you can't trust that I heard this and so therefore that applies to me or that applies to my office. So do you mind talking about that a little bit and just the importance of what we need to be thinking about nowadays?
Sure. Yeah, employment compliance is just like all the other compliance things that we have in an orthodontic office, right? There's all the charting and record keeping stuff. There's all the OSHA infection control pieces. There's HIPAA, cybersecurity, and then there's employment compliance. And all of those are relatively similar in terms of there are rules that are out there that you have to follow. There are protocols, procedures, manuals, step-by-step procedures. There are things that change over time and all of that. So in the employment compliance world, you have federal rules, you also have state rules. Depending on where you're located, there's also a little bit of city and county rules as well. And there's no thing that says, oh, federal always supersedes state or state always supersedes. There's none of that. It is based on what is most beneficial to the employee, the one that is most stringent on the employer. And so it is a case by case basis. And so depending on the state that you're in and how many employees you have, yeah, there may be a whole different set of things that you have to think about, be aware of, protections for employees and all of that versus being in a different state with a different number of employees. And that's also one of the challenges with Facebook groups, forums, and so on, which are great for many reasons as far as, having community and norming with colleagues and all of that. But I'm a part of some of those, as I'm sure you are. And I always feel like I'm the bearer of bad news because people will say, hey, what do you guys do for continuing education pay? Or what do you guys do when it's jury duty or whatever? And people chime in and say, here's what I do. Here's what I do. And some of the stuff is just not allowed, or it depends on the state. It depends on the circumstances. It's more nuanced than just, what people are saying. So here's a couple stats. So one of the things we do is we track and monitor state and federal labor changes. So anytime there's a new law that comes out or there's a significant change to an existing rule, we notify people in draft language and all that. So in the period from the beginning of 2015 to the end of 2019, we sent out 87 policy changes nationwide. So 87 in a 5-year period. Then in the period from the beginning of 2020 to the end of 2024, we did 259.
Oh my gosh.
So it's almost a fourfold increase. Now, of course,
Right.
if you're in a state like California or New York or Massachusetts, you got more than people in Nebraska or Mississippi or Florida. But everybody in every state got at least a couple during those time periods. And this is one of those reminders of why it's so important to know what these rules are and to stay up to date. It's why you can't just write an employee handbook, put it on the shelf, and never look at it ever again. Now, if we were having this conversation 15, 20 years ago, yeah, it'd be a different story, a little bit more of a free-for-all. But just in the last 10 years, there have been 11 states that have passed paid family leave rules. These function like unemployment, people pay into it. And then when there's a childbirth, a medical situation, whatever, people can draw from that. Just in the last 10 years, there have been 16 states that have passed mandatory sick leave. That is really impactful if you do PTO, where you merge your vacation and sick leave together. And then on the pregnancy front, in the last 10 years, there have been 26 states that have passed or modified some sort of accommodation around pregnancy. And we, of course, think about how common pregnancy is in the world. And that's half the country. And these are accommodation rules that come into play around protecting employees that are disabled, pregnant, and so on. So yeah, the compliance thing is big. It's important. The other thing to really keep in mind of why HR compliance is more impactful and a bigger deal is that HR compliance directly impacts your employees. OSHA and HIPAA and some of that, yeah, it's important, but it's 1 degree separated because that's the patients, that's over there. But HR compliance is right here, right now with me as an employee and what I get, what I'm entitled to, what is fair, and are you giving that person more benefits than you're giving me? And all of that kind of stuff is so important. And again, if we were having this conversation 20 years ago, the internet wasn't as big of a thing. Google wasn't as big of a thing. We didn't have ChatGPT. But now employees can just go to ChatGPT and say, does my employer have to pay me for this? Or should I be getting time off for this thing that I have? And ChatGPT, to be clear, does not always get everything right. I do not recommend that you rely on ChatGPT for your HR compliance, but it can definitely give people a starting point that then they can start pulling on that thread. And more state labor boards have all of their labor information out there publicly available and all of that. And all of that's a good thing ultimately, because I would hope that everyone listening, ultimately, they want to be in compliance. They don't want to do wrong by their employees and all of that. And so, what this means is just employers have to step up their game a little bit. It's like you can't afford to do something that's just mediocre or non compliant or that kind of thing. And the other thing too that I'll say is all of this compliance stuff, out of all the things that you could do with your time as an orthodontist or a manager or whatever, this kind of stuff is the most time consuming because you have to get notified about these laws. You have to research the bill. These are bills that are hundreds of pages long. You got to tease apart what's applicable for you, write a policy, hope you didn't miss anything. It's a lot of work. Not saying that you can't do it yourself, but it's a lot of work. And so really important to think about what's your time worth, what's your office manager's time worth, and do people really have the skills and training to do this kind of stuff?
Yeah. No, I think that's such a good point. And I just want to echo on top of what you said right there at the very end, especially to a lot of the startup doctors that are out there listening. I think so many times you think, it's just about getting an office manual in place. And I just need to have these basic things in it and I'm good to go. To your point, there are so many rules and regulations and things that are so state specific that as you get going along and you get busier and busier, if you don't know to go in and you don't have that reminder at the end of every year to go in and check what are the new policies, what's changed, go in and update that manual, and then go have your employees sign the new manual with the new upgrades in it and the new changes in it, you can really find yourself in a pickle, I think, very easily, especially the farther along you go and the farther away from keeping that manual updated, it can really become an issue.
Oh, yeah, big time. Yeah. And more states are having rules that take effect in the middle of the year. It used to be that everything always took effect January 1. And then California's sick leave took effect July 1 a bunch of years ago. More rules take effect just randomly. The legislature passes it, the governor signs it, and then they say, hey, let's just have this take effect a month from now. And so all of a sudden there's a rule that is now applicable October 1st. And so yeah, even just checking once a year is sometimes not even enough in that regard.
Yeah. This has been great. And I know that you and I could just like every time I have you on, I'm like, oh, we're gonna get some good meat and potatoes on today's Hey Doc. So if somebody wants to find out more about Ben Erickson, they want to talk to you, they want to maybe they've got something in place and they're like, yeah, they've talked about enough things that I think I need some help. What's going to be the best way, Alan, that they can connect with you?
Sure, I would say just reach out to us. Our website is benterickson.com, and folks can reach out to me at alan@benterickson.com or reach out to our info at. We've got stuff on our website about who we are and what we do and how it all works. Happy to set up a complimentary consultation call with you to learn more about your practice, what you got, what you're looking for, and all of that. But yeah, we have a little package of services. It's designed to get you into compliance and allow you to have all the tools and resources so that you can handle whatever comes up with the employees, all the things we've talked about, and keeping things up to date and all of that. And it's very simple. We know that HR is not why you're in business, right? You're in business to be a wonderful and amazing orthodontist and have the best practice in your area and all of that. So everything is designed to be very simple, very approachable, very easy to use. And we're there when you need us. And when you don't need us, we fade to the background and you do what you do. Yeah, it's all designed to be very simple and very easy to use.
Yeah, I love that. Again, thanks for being on Hey Docs today with me. And I'm sure you remember the way I like to finish us off with is with a little speed round. Are you ready for the speed round challenge?
Let's do it.
Honestly, I'm always like, that's the least favorite part when I have to do it when somebody's put me on the spot. Yeah, let's do it.
Sure.
All right. So, what is one daily habit or ritual that helps you stay productive or balanced?
I've been doing this one for a little while, and it's basically that I don't check my email first thing in the morning. And it takes discipline because there's temptation. It's, oh, the inbox is there. Let's see what's there. But I will focus on some sort of project or some little task for half an hour or even an hour. And it is life changing. To
Oh,
be
I love
honest,
that.
it is amazing. It's like by not checking my email, it's like I just look at some tasks or other things, get that thing done, and the rest of the day feels like the best day ever after that.
Yeah.
So
I I might have
I,
to
I don't always do it, but man, when I do, it's awesome.
Yeah, I might have to take a page out of your book because I definitely start the other way, and I think that just spirals me into whatever it is that I just saw in the inbox and keeps me away from the tasks that I really want to do. So
For sure.
that's a great little tip there. All right, how about another one? If you could add one unconventional perk to every workplace, what would you add?
I would say I would love it if every workplace invested in fun, quality time together. So, whether
Mm,
that's having coffee together, lunch together, playing games together, going and seeing movies together. Obviously, it depends on the size of your team and how feasible some of those things are. But just building that in, I think it's important for folks to get together and hang out. It doesn't have to be too much, not like every single day kind of a thing, but that kind of stuff, that quality time together, it's magical. It's
yeah.
really nice.
Yeah, I totally agree with you. All right. And the last one that we will finish up with, what is one business idea you have seen recently that you wish you had thought of?
This one's not really new, but it came up for me recently, and it was someone who had started and done a book club with some colleagues, reading
Hmm.
a business book, and then
Hmm.
they would all
Hmm.
talk about it. And I know people have done that for a while, but I want to adopt something like that. I'm not quite sure how I'm going to do it, but something like that's like HR, almost like an HR book club type of a thing. Or it's about leadership, it's about team building, it's something like that. And
Yeah,
I think that'd be fun.
I totally agree. Put my name on that list when you come up with that idea.
All right, will do.
All right. Thank you again. This has been just a real treat having you on and your knowledge. I know everybody has just been on like the seat of their chair the whole time. Okay, feed us more, feed us more. So thank you so much for just all the great insight that you had for us today.
Yeah, thank you for having me on. Always a pleasure. Happy to share all this info. It's a tough world in HR with a little bit of help, a little bit of training and everything. It can be a really awesome thing because, again, we spend all that time at work with all these people. We might as well enjoy it.
Yeah, absolutely. All right. Until next time, thank you.
Yep. Thank you.